Welcome everyone. My name is Linda G. Robert, and I'm here today with Bob Welch. Bob's journey spans a rich tapestry of experiences and achievements. With an honors BA in American literature as his starting point, he embarked on an 18-year career as a corporate and sports photographer in New York, working with HBO and Showtime, Elektra Records, just to name a few. Transitioning then into the golf-based club fitting, embracing digital technology early on to enhance the fitting process. In his 11-year stint in IT network management services and cybersecurity, Bob played a significant role in driving substantial company revenue. I'm very curious about this, and I'll be asking. Revolves a belief that no is better than a bad sale. He champions transparency, selling benefits over features, and knows that all business is personal. And now Bob is a coach and a mentor, and he loves coaching entrepreneurs, startups, and underperforming businesses. Welcome, Bob. Welcome.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I am so curious about your early business experience. Can you tell us how it all started for you?
Well, I'm a true child of the 60s. And so, and I'm a true studier of American literature, especially the Walden Pond type era and Thoreau and those folks, and individualism and being on your own and supporting yourself instead of working 9 to 5 to support other people is really what's driven me my whole life.
Now, yet you have worked with companies before, right?
I have. I take the same kind of approach as an employee, and really I've only been an employee for 2 different companies in my whole life.
Right.
And both for building jobs. So it was almost like I was on my own and I was building something for myself. When you're in sales and you work on commissions, a lot of what you do is for yourself. And so driving sales benefits the owner as well as yourself.
Right. So when you work for a company and you also work yourself by getting some commissions, how did you motivate yourself?
Well, I have a wife and 3 children and a dog. And so that motivates me every day to get out of bed and earn my living. And there is some ego involved where you want to be able to say, I did this, and feel good about that as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, part of your belief is that no sale is better than a bad sale. I'm curious about how you learned this. How did you learn this?
Well, I always felt that you want happy people that you deal with, right? Everything I've done is to try to make somebody's life better. And I actually sold a very expensive set of clubs to somebody, and based on a fitting process and all that procedure. And he actually didn't play better, and he really hated them, and he caused quite a ruckus post sale, let's say. And so so I learned that if you do something well, somebody tells 3 people. If you do something that somebody doesn't like, whether it's your fault or not, they tell 33 people. And so my father told me a long time ago, you have only one name, don't soil it. And I've tried to live my life that way. And so after that, if I had any doubts that what I was providing wasn't the best fit for them, I just would rather not do it.
Mhm. So has the sales business changed over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years? The approach of selling, has that changed?
Um, I think I think products and services have become more commoditized over my lifespan, where
Hmm.
and it has to do with, I think, personal relationships as well, where the people I've done best with as customers that I've hit it off with, right? We have a synergy together, and there's some trust built in.
Yeah,
I think nowadays, whether it's because of the remote workers, the COVID, where people were isolated, um, it's much more a bottom line, how much and how fast. And
yeah,
it's to the detriment of that kind of relationship I've enjoyed. And, I think entrepreneurs as a whole like that personal relationship. And so
yeah,
I see it as a new obstacle is how do you try and not commoditize yourself and still maintain personal relationships? It's a
yeah.
challenge.
And yeah, and that would probably be a challenge of a startup company, for example, right?
Going
Hmm.
thread through most of the startups that I've worked with, and they have a hard time answering why they're doing what they're doing. You know, in the golf business, is why should I buy this golf club versus that golf club? In the technology world, it's why do I need this? And if you don't have the reasons why you're doing
Right.
anything, why you're selling something, why they should buy it, why you started a business, it makes something difficult way more difficult.
So tell me, why do startups and young entrepreneurs have such a difficult time maybe staying in business? What's their why now?
I think they have a hard time staying in business because they don't have a sense of their why. I'm a fan of Simon Sinek, and his famous why, everyone I think knows. But they also haven't done adequate market research. They think they have a good idea and they want to run with it. Maybe their friends think it's a good idea, but they find out that it may be a great idea, but no one wants it or nobody cares about it. And so that's also part of the why is why should I, buy from you?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's sort of intertwined, but market research and frankly, market research for startups is talking to people, right? It's going out and it's going to the park and saying, "Excuse me, I'm starting a new business. Can I ask you some questions?
right,
What
right.
What do you think about, uh, I have a ketchup dispenser. What do you think about ketchup on a hot dog? Would you use a dispenser for that?" And find out nobody puts ketchup on a hot dog. And
Right.
and then they go, need to go back to the drawing board before they're knee deep in it.
So what you're saying is that market research is essential for any entrepreneur or any startup.
Absolutely. You need to know that what you
Yeah.
want to do has an audience.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, I always say if I had a cure for cancer and no doctor knew about it, what do I have? Right? I have nothing. And
Yeah.
so if there's not a market for what you do, you have nothing.
Hmm. I want to go back to how you've helped businesses grow and how you might have helped them, some of the businesses you worked with or for, how you've helped them overcome some of their challenges in the past.
Um, but we'll start with the golf business.
Hmm.
The golf equipment business is dominated by five brands, right? And so there's a question in the golf world: Why would I strive if I have Bob's golf clubs? Why would I even look at Bob's golf clubs when there's five brands I see on TV every day? And so
Yeah.
McGregor Golf was a storied name in the world of golf equipment. It had not done well probably 30 years. And I actually knew the president of another new iteration of McGregor Golf. He was a high school player at a golf course in Connecticut I used to play. And I actually challenged him to say that I could increase their sales at golf courses. So I had developed what I call performance-based fitting program using digital technology, as you referenced, where we could measure shots. So now they could hit a McGregor club versus a Callaway, and I could tell them why one was better than the other. And again, going back to my thinking, if the Callaway was better, I did not want to sell them a McGregor. And so I did that for 3 months. I reopened a number of dormant accounts, reopened a dozen or so new accounts, sold a fair bit of equipment. And then the next year, it was Florida was the #1 territory for McGregor. So,
wow.
I had I had plowed the field, I guess you would say. And so that led them to then retask me to start a new line of business, which was selling club heads only, which was called components. And, we did 600 something thousand. I had 31, I believe, accounts at 34 different locations, a couple in Canada, the rest across the US. That became self-running, right? Yeah. And so I turned back to the green grass sales, which is on golf course sales. And I came up with this strategy of how do you get into these courses now? And so if they're loaded down with thousands and thousands of inventory dollars from the big five, how are they going to get with us? So I developed this program called virtual inventory, where the golf professional would make a financial commitment.
Virtual.
And in return for that financial commitment, we would come in with factory trained fitters and fit people into McGregor clubs. And we had really a great program. I had developed, if you want to call it, corporate protocols for fitting. Everyone would have been fitting the same. We all had digital technology. Unfortunately, that spring gas hit $5 a gallon back in 2008. The ownership got cold feet and things fell apart, and McGregor was shut down. But during that time, I was the #1. That in 2008, selling components, I was the #1 sales rep in the company.
I'm thinking of some companies now or startups, I should say, where they start off and maybe they've done their market research, but perhaps they want to go from A to Z in 1 year. How likely are they to succeed?
Well, it depends on what Z is, right? I think the biggest obstacle for a startup, once they have a plan, an idea that what they have is viable, is how do you separate yourself from the competition? And how do you, differentiation is a key to small company success. And so, at McGregor, we were measuring performance, and the other companies were having you hit their equipment and saying, geez, doesn't that look good? And we were telling them exactly why it was good or not good. And so we differentiated ourselves by being a little bit, I won't say in your face, but a little bit more upfront and a little bit more technical, a lot more technical. And the other companies were just relying on people buying. We were giving people reasons to buy. And I think for a startup, being different, being innovative, having a different method of reaching your prospective customers is the next big hurdle we have to overcome.
Right. Now, you were in business, for many, many years, and then you eventually transitioned to being a coach, to being a mentor to startup companies. How did you make that shift?
Well, when McGregor shut down, and I got involved with a couple of small companies that were underfunded. I got into some financial difficulties and started really trying to look back at my life. And one thing I found was that I liked, well, I'll backtrack a second. One thing I found is that whatever I did made people happy, whether it was, photo concerts or whether it was better golf clubs, whether it was teaching them, I was teaching golf for a while. It made their lives more enjoyable. And so I sort of found this thread, and it led me into this venture mentoring team, which is located down in Fort Lauderdale. Somebody I talked to told me about it, and I went through their program, and I started working pro bono with startups, and I found it really rewarding. And they were appreciative, they listened, they grew, and I felt good about it. And part of it is helping people not make the mistakes that I made. I didn't have a mentor. Right. Nobody knew what a business coach was back, in the 80s.
Right,
and
right.
So, and the venture mentoring, part of their core belief is giving back, and it really struck me that giving back is really self-fulfilling.
Right. Yeah. So, what's your approach like? When you're coaching a new company, what do you do? How do you do it?
So one of my bugaboos is there are a lot of gurus out there, right? Self-help gurus, business gurus, and they make a lot of promises. And so one thing that struck me is that I came up with a list of things that I would deliver to a customer or a client, right? And so when you're in sales, you put your money where your mouth is. And so why not in coaching? Because anyone can make promises. Tony Robbins is fabulously wealthy by making promises. Who knows if it's worked for anybody? I certainly don't.
Right.
So I came up with 9 deliverables that I would work through with each client.
Okay.
The first being ROI, return on investment, right? Because you're asking somebody to pay you to help them.
That's right.
So that can be a staggering concept. And so they have to understand, you have to help them understand that the investment is in themselves and that they're worthy of that investment. And that investment will, bear fruit, so to speak. The second one is personal responsibility. I've worked with a lot of people who, when things went wrong, it was never their fault.
Right. Yeah, that's a big one.
So if you own a company, everything's your fault. The good things are your fault and the bad things are your fault. And so getting someone to accept that they are he or she, they are responsible for their decisions.
Yes.
Attainable goals, right? Like getting from A to Z. What does that really mean?
Yes.
Is your goal from 0 to 1 million? Well, probably not. Is your goal a ladder, a progressive increase in business? That's probably obtainable. And so what are your realistic goals? You're not going to sell 1 million widgets in the first year.
Yes.
Unless it has some magic power to it. So after realistic goal setting becomes leadership skills, because how do you get others on board?
Yes.
And so if you have a great plan and you can't articulate it and you can't get a team behind that, it's not going to go anywhere.
So I've got a question on that before we move on. Is that part of what you do? Let's face it, we either have leadership skills or we don't. So
I think everybody is capable of leading.
Okay.
If they understand the accountability, if they understand what they're bringing to the table is realistic, if they're willing to work with people. I mean, I'm a huge Steve Jobs fan not in terms of his life, but in terms of his articulation. You know, one of the things he said is, "Why would I ever hire someone not as smart as me? I want people who are smarter than me because
Right.
they'll
Yeah.
tell me what to do." And you know, leadership is spreading the wealth, so to speak, letting people make decisions and letting people feel they're engaged and having them be engaged, never mind letting them feel, you know, letting them have an impact on the
Right.
company. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think leaders are born. I think leaders they learn how to lead. Uh,
Right.
and there are
Mm-hmm.
plenty of examples of people who have been great leaders that you would look at and say, how did he ever accomplish that? Or how did she get to that point in time?
Mm-hmm.
So I think leadership can be taught. Um, Part of that is number four on my list, or number five is new perspective, right?
Yes.
One of the biggest problems that I find that small business owners and entrepreneurs have is that they work in their business. They're like an employee.
Right.
They're doing everything. They're wearing many hats. They're juggling many balls, and so they lose sense of what you might call the bigger picture, right? So they're working in their business as an employee versus on their business and developing it and growing it, uh, putting it on an upwards trajectory. And
Right.
that's really hard for some people to do. Leaders can do that. You know, people who delegate, trust others, who hire quality people, they can
Mm-hmm.
work on their business
Mm-hmm.
because,
And when in the business let's say timeline would they start to do that? What do you recommend? When would they start giving ownership to some of their employees?
well, if it's a startup, it better be pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
If it's established business, you know that the process of them, someone who's used to ordering people instead of letting people run with the ball, so to speak, uh, can be a process. So it's you know where the
Mm-hmm.
starting point is on all that is really individual to each
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
But you know through the process that I worked through, we sort of get to that. Whether you're about to open the doors or whether the doors have been open for 10 years. You know, I like a progression, and I like to work through that progression. And when they're ready to start thinking about delegation and trust, then they're about ready to actually enact it
Okay.
because we've come on a continuum that gets them to a point of seeing that new perspective and seeing their business as I see it from an outsider, right? So one of the things with new perspectives is you also tend to surround yourself, even as a human, with like-minded people,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and you get myopic, and then here I come and I see all the stuff, and
Right.
they go, "Really? Wow, I never saw that."
Right.
Um, and so, you know, it's a process. It's a growing process, really, more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. All right. You have a few other deliverables you'd like to
I
mention?
do. One of them is strategic planning, right? Goes with goal setting. Is like, what is your continuum? Is it
Yeah.
12 months? Is it 12 years? Is it, you know, 2 years? Would like to see progressive growth and not, you know, not dramatic growth and decline. And
Yes.
so, and innovation, right? Like how the medium's
Mm.
the message. How do you get your message to be different from, you know, you're selling widgets and there's 10 widget companies. How are you
Yes.
doing? So that's part of your strategic planning. Um, Improving the bottom line. Like most companies have the window open and, you know, $100 bills are flying out the window and people don't see that because they're not on their business. They're in their business. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
you know, cost cutting, uh, it's amazing how um, I don't want to get too specific, but it's amazing how people don't keep control of their costs versus what they charge. And
Right.
so they're not working on true margins. They don't have them. They don't have margins of profitability in their pricing. A lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, will do things that they want to charge for, but they don't, right? It doesn't win
Yes.
any friends to do things for free or to
Yes.
cut the price. What you do is your skill, and you can't cheapen your skill. And then sustainability, right? So now we get the company rolling. So how do we sustain it? Well, it goes back to accountability and personal ownership. It comes back to leadership. Is you have to create a culture where your team is engaged in a company. They actually feel part of a team, that if the company is benefiting, they benefit. And that's a very hard culture to hold,
Right.
because the owner is in somewhat of a tenuous position, because they see these people gaining strength and energy and personal power, and it can be threatening. But the key, no company is successful with an unhappy team,
Right.
unsatisfied team.
No, I'm just thinking, because you've worked with startups, but you also work with underperforming businesses. Could that explain some of the underperforming businesses?
Well, I think all of them contribute to that. Is that they don't have reasonable goals, they don't have innovative thinking, they don't have a culture where people feel their voice is meaningful, and so the owner sits back and says, "Why aren't we doing better?"
Yeah.
And again, he's in his business instead of outside looking on his business, and he doesn't see all that. And so a lot of underperforming companies just need to look at the owners just need to look at their business differently, and understand you can't do it yourself. You need a team. It's a group effort, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you follow
To
football,
add the coaching, mentoring element.
yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm teaching, right? I'm a teacher. I'm a builder,
Right.
and I teach people. And that's, like I said, I look back after 20, 10 or 12 years ago, I look back at my life and said, that's what I do. I help people, I teach people, and I find that really
Right.
rewarding. It sounds a little corny, but I do. Like I said, I'm a child of the 60s. I want to feel good about what I do.
So, yes, absolutely. So can you give us a specific example of a startup company that you did, in fact, help out?
Well, I'm working with a company now. I won't mention their name. Three guys. We
Mm-hmm.
went to high school together. They have stayed friends throughout college. Each is out of college, and they love politics. They love to talk politics, right? They love to argue political theory, whatever. So they felt that they looked around, and they see these gamers, and the gamers streaming online, and the interaction of the gamers
Right.
online. And why can't we develop a streaming platform for political discourse? Seems pretty reasonable.
Okay. Okay.
So they felt that college students were their prime targets, right? That college students love politics. So when I came into the picture, I questioned that. And there's a book that I really think is critically important to business ownership. And it's called Speaking to Humans. And the theory is that you interview 100 people, and you get 100 ideas, and you can start to come to a consensus if what you're doing, again, it's market research, if what you're doing meets some kind of niche.
Okay.
So I sent them a book. I insisted they read it, and they went out and they found out college students have no interest in political discourse. So now what?
Yeah, exactly.
So now they have, at that point, they had about 50,000 of their own dollars invested in the streaming platform, the technology. And so they had something that nobody wanted. So to their credit, they readjusted their thinking, and they found that there are political streamers with their own audience, and
Mm.
they've lured, I think, a half a dozen or so of them to come onto their platform with their audiences, and those audiences tend to be older. I won't say they're as old as I am, but they're pretty close because, again, if you grew up in the 60s, you love to argue, you love to debate, you love to talk politics, and uh, they were shocked. In fact, I told them
Right,
because
right, right.
there's something down the road in West Palm Beach, the Forum Club, which brings in political speakers. And I said, you should go to a Forum Club luncheon and interview. The average age is probably 75, but they're diehards. They love it. And so why wouldn't they then be interested in what you're offering?
Yeah,
They
makes
did. They
complete
didn't do it,
sense.
but they did. They did realize that their thinking was wrong, and they did something to fix it.
That's what's important. Yeah.
Right. Coaching is getting them to someplace, not doing it for them. They have to do it for themselves.
That's right. Yes. And you help them to get there.
I try. Yep, I do.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, the work that you do or that you're offering, is it done face to, I shouldn't say face to face, on site? Is it done virtually? How do you deliver your service?
All of the above. I
Mm.
mean, I'm trying to do things in a more contained geographic area where you could meet with somebody at Starbucks or you
Mm-hmm.
could have lunch. But, I mean, this is virtual here, and I seem to be talking pretty well, and
Yeah,
we're having a good conversation,
that's right.
and we can do it virtually as well. You can do it at
Right.
somebody's office. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever works is what we'll do, and we don't know what'll work until we figure it out.
So if I was going to ask you, what are some of your unique skills, your unique experiences and qualities that set you apart?
Well, I've been in three very distinct industries.
Mm-hmm.
I'll call photojournalism an industry where it was a lot of creative, a lot of competition. Everything I've done has been in a very competitive field,
Mm.
and a lot of self-reliance. Here's a job, go do it. And then in the golf business, I mean, it's highly competitive.
Right.
In my position, you have lost 8 of your 9 cat lives, and so you better be different and have some sort of niche, right? I believe in niches. So
Okay.
every company needs a niche. And
And tell
then,
us, sorry to interrupt, tell us what a niche is, because sometimes people think, oh, I don't need a niche. I'll just, try to work with everyone, sort of thing.
yeah, a niche is a certain demographic, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and a certain type of personality, I think a certain industry. I mean, to some degree, I can help any business owner in any industry, but, you know, really my forte has been how to sell products, right? How to get people to, I don't like to say I sell products. I like to say I get people to understand why they need to buy my product
Right.
and how it makes their life better. If
Yeah.
they want to, then they buy it. If they don't, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time I said to a business owner, it's your business. I'm giving you my best advice, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. If you want to, this service or that service or whatever, it's up to you. And so, I think smaller groups is part of my niche. I would never go into a company of 100 lawyers, say, and try and tackle that. I'm more of a one-on-one type person, and working with these three young gentlemen has been good. There's a lot of mixing of ideas and back and forth.
Right.
If you get to a company where there's 50, it's probably more than I care to deal with. So
Mm-hmm.
really, it's if there's synergy between me and the business owner. If
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
again, people do business with people they like,
Right.
and
Mhm. Would
that's
you work? Would you work with a team as well, like the executive team or
Sure.
the owner?
I mean, again, it would be a smaller group, usually within let's say a C-suite. Usually within a C-suite, there's two or three now. I mean, two or three people. I have a company now. They came to us on a referral, as they make elevators for inside your house, and they have grown to 4 locations, and they have a management team, but really it's two or three people that I talk to, and
Right.
deal with on what I do. I don't
Right.
take on the whole team. I don't go to the various locations. Um, they have 89 employees, which seems a lot, but spread over 4 territories, it's not that unmanageable. And they have a good thumb
Hmm.
on it, a good pulse of the company. So yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, I like them. And so, one of them's a golfer, his son's in college playing golf, and there's simpatico there and there's synergy, and we make it work.
Right. Right. So as we near the end of our meeting here, how would people find out more about you, about your services?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn and I have a website,
Okay, we'll
Bob
add your
Welsh.
link. Good. Okay.
I have LinkedIn. I have a website that seems to be constantly under construction, but it's bobwelsh.net, WELSH. My phone number is on both LinkedIn and on the website, my email. Um, I use Microsoft Office 365, so I'm on Teams, and
Wonderful.
I'm pretty reachable.
Good. I'll make sure that those links are added to our meeting as well. Is there
That'd be great.
anything else you want to add, Bob?
Well, the only thing I would add is that even superstars have coaches, right? LeBron James
Right.
has a coach, has probably
Yes.
10 coaches, right? A diet coach, a strength coach, this coach, that coach.
Right.
Um, so nobody can do it alone. Nobody can reach their full potential on their own. There's just too much distraction. There's too many obstacles. There's too many things. So uh,
Yeah.
having outside perspective, I think, is essential. Having somebody who's been there is essential. Having
Yeah.
someone you can talk to and say, "What the hell," uh, is essential,
Yeah.
and not feel, I won't, not ashamed, but not feel awkward doing it, and
Right.
having that kind of relationship to help, and
Yeah.
know that I'm here to help. I like to help.
That right from the start that you noticed that there was a common thread that you enjoyed working and helping people, helping individuals.
Who knew? But it's there.
Yeah. You mentioned that all business is personal. Let's talk a little bit about that before we end our call. All business is personal
Well,
to our
in the world that it's me and you. And if I'm going to sit in front of you with a camera, or if I'm going to sit with you with a golf club, and I'm going to sit with you and talk about your network security, it's me and you. And so there has to be I wouldn't say an attraction, but there has to be some energy and something that you say, this guy's pretty good. He's pretty cool. Like if I go on a sales call, the first thing I'll do is look around and see what memorabilia the person has, and try and find some commonality. Most people down here are Florida Gator fans. My daughter just graduated from the University of Florida, so you talk Gators, and you break the ice Gators, or even if it's FSU, or I'm a diehard Patriot fan. So if I go in and I see somebody with a Miami Dolphins plaque or something, then I start about that,
yeah.
and it gets you, it humanizes each other to where it becomes a personal transaction.
Well, I want to thank you, Bob, Mr. Welsh, for
Never. That
meeting
was my
with me today.
father.
Now, do we call you Bob or Mr. Welsh?
No, Bob. My father was Mr. Welsh. I'm not
Well,
old
I
enough to
want
be
to
called
thank you.
father. I mean, Mister.
I get that. Believe me, I get that. So thank you again for meeting with us today.